Hello. I am so amazed that I'm here. Today was a little on the crazy side. I got up this morning in Butte, Montana, and drove here in a 45-foot motor coach that I'm going to be using for training sessions. I actually had a really great time with the drive. It was beautiful weather, and Montana and Idaho and northern Utah were all lovely. And my bus is fabulous. I named her Brittany. She's my new bestie. And so we're going to have a great adventure for the next few months, training drivers to work in Alaska. So I'm a little tired and more than a little unprepared for my Sunday Night Live show tonight. So I hope that you will bear with me and be kind. So what we're going to be talking about tonight is taking action. And in order to take action, we have to climb over some fear. And fear is a big deal. And I'm going to talk a little bit about fear. Fear is a huge topic, so I'm going to have to talk about it here and there throughout our sessions, because the problem with fear is there are so many of them and so many different ideas about how to alleviate them. And so I'll explore some of those tonight, kind of a thumbnail sketch, and then I've had a few questions that I'm going to try to address as well. But before we get into that, I wanted to review last week, and last week we talked about service, and I think it went pretty well, except for at the very end I didn't get to talk about one aspect of service that I wanted to include real quickly at the beginning of our show tonight, and that was being a giver versus being a receiver. We talked a lot about giving and why we should give and how it rewards us as well as those that receive. But what I didn't get a chance to remind you about was, in order to give, you have to have someone to receive. And so it's incredibly important that you learn to be a gracious receiver as well. When I was a teenager, I had the opportunity to hear an awesome woman speak on the blessings of being a receiver. And I know that sometimes it's really hard to be a receiver because you feel like maybe you're a charity case, or that you have some way failed, and so you need something from someone else. But it's really important that when you need someone, you ask for help and that you receive it graciously. And then once you receive help, that you are not only glad for it, and you are kind to the person that gave it to you and not angry or defensive, and that you remember to be thankful to the powers that be as well, because it's really important that we are gracious and that we say thank you to all that are involved when we are receivers. Also, by being a good receiver, it lets God or the universe or whoever you like to imagine is out there know that you are willing to receive gifts, and that they can at any time they want just shower you with all those wonderful gifts. I feel really blessed that I got that lesson as a young person, and that I've had the opportunity to spend a lot of my life developing those skills. And it takes a little practice to be a gracious receiver, but just do the math and think about it. If we all want to be great givers and nobody's there to receive, yeah, it doesn't add up. So at least 50% of us have to be receiving at all times, so the other 50% can be awesome givers. So don't deprive those around you of the blessings of being good givers by being an ungracious receiver. So that is kind of a conclusion that I didn't get a chance to present last week when we were talking about service. So in transition, I'm going to talk about taking action today. And taking action is super important. It's so easy to set goals, and it's so easy to have dreams, and sometimes it's easy to think about what you might want to do, but then just taking even the tiniest first step can be really difficult. And one of the main reasons that that can be incredibly difficult is because of fear. And we have a lot of different kinds of fear that infect our daily lives. And one of the main forms of fear that cause us to stop doing the things that we love or something that we think would be good for us or someone else is the fear of other people's opinions. Now, I'm not going to preach to you about not caring what other people think, because not caring what other people think is different than not caring about their opinion. And so there's a actually, it's not even a fine line, it's a big huge ditch there between the two, because anything that you do that hurts someone else because you don't care how they feel, it's not going to be a positive thing for you, for your karma, for them, for life in general. However, if you are constantly depriving yourself of the freedom to live your life because you are so worried about what somebody else is going to think of you, then you're depriving not only yourself, but the universe and the world and God's creations of the real you. And there's only one real you. You are completely and utterly unique. And by not allowing yourself to exercise your talents or to follow that prompting that you have in your heart and to become who you really can be, because you're afraid what somebody else is going to think, is tragic. The people that we typically worry about the most are our family, loved ones, and close friends. And sometimes you can have a conversation with them, and sometimes you can't. Sometimes that person is already gone, or sometimes it's not somebody that you feel like you can approach. Maybe you have someone in your life who you are afraid if you were to talk to them and say, you know, I understand that you're going to disagree with my decision, but I need to do this for me. It's not going to be somebody that's going to understand. And sometimes those people, well, we get up in a place in our lives where we need to take a little step back and not worry so much about what they think by putting a little distance between us. I'm not saying divorce your family. I would never say that. But sometimes distance can be a good thing. Sometimes you just keep your dreams to yourself and maybe just go off and do what you want to do and not really make a big deal out of discussing it with those that you know are going to have a hard time with it. Sometimes there's going to be backlash. A lot of people do what they do because their parents want them to do that. I have so many friends that are going into careers because that's what their mom and dad think they should do instead of what they really want to do. And I find that ultimately they're not happy. And I think that if they were to examine the situation a little more, they would find out that a lot of times what your parent really wants you is to be happy. And if you were to confide in them that pursuing what they think you should do is going to make you miserable, a lot of times your parents will come around. Another option is to just go out and do what you want and become wildly successful. They usually come on board at that point. So that is another opportunity that you can have to become successful and to overcome those fears. Another fear that we have is the fear of failure. Now, the fear of failure is actually the fear of starting. So then I find a lot of people have these dreams or these ideas or these goals, and they never make it off the drawing table or out of their heads simply because they're afraid to fail. But what they really are afraid of is afraid of starting, because almost inevitably, if you take that first tiny step toward your goal, you find the next one's easier, and the one after that is even easier than that. And eventually, you wake up one day and realize that you've reached your goal and you've climbed over all of those fears. And it's not easy, and sometimes you have to really sit down and do some serious soul searching and figure out what tiny, tiny step can be that first step, because any action at all toward your goals will help you to get a little bit better at climbing over that particular fear. Another fear that a lot of folks have is the fear of the future and what's going to happen tomorrow. And when it comes to a fear of the future, a lot of times that's just really your inner small voice trying to convince you to stay where you are. We are by nature creatures that seek comfort. And in the past, when it was important and imperative that we function in society in a way that kept us together and kept us included in the society and not outcast in order for our survival, those fears were incredibly important. And sometimes even today, those fears can come into play, and it can be really important to not get kicked out of the collective. However, in most circumstances in today's world, those fears are kind of unrealistic. And the fear of not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow is basically the fear of being rejected by the tribe and the collective. And in order to overcome that fear, you just have to remind yourself over and over, even by saying it out loud in the mirror if it becomes that necessary, that everyone's going to love you even if you fail, even if you try, and no matter what you do, the next day when you get up, there are going to be people that'll love you. And then once you conquer that fear of rejection, of being an outcast, then it's easier to face whatever comes up the next day. Setting goals is another way to deal with that particular fear. And setting goals is something that we've talked about in previous shows, and that I will continue to bring up throughout the shows that we have coming up in the future, because goal setting is incredibly important, because measuring how far we've come toward our goals, or how far we've come toward the things that we want to accomplish, especially with our New Decade project going on, then being able to measure those is a lot easier if you have set a goal and you have a way to keep track of how close you are to reaching that goal. So that's another way that will alleviate a little bit of the fear of tomorrow, because if you have a goal that you're working toward, you have some kind of idea of what's coming up, and that helps to alleviate that fear a lot. Another fear is the fear of being successful. Some people have a fear that if they're successful, that the people around them will resent them and will no longer like them. And speaking as someone who spent a vast majority of their life being a people pleaser, not being liked can be really scary. But the reality of the situation is that the people that truly like and love you, if you're successful, they're still going to like and love you. And that's the people that really count. The people that are outliers, that you may just know casually, well, their opinions just aren't as important as those that are close to you. And those that are close to you are going to love you, whether you succeed or fail, as long as you are trying your best to be happy. So that's how to overcome that one. And then another one is a fear of being able to survive and to take care of your family and to be able to successfully navigate just life in general. And that fear is best addressed by taking action. And taking action is what we're going to be talking about tonight. Action is amazing. It's absolutely tantamount to a miracle to get off the couch and take one step toward that goal on some days. But I know that if you just take that first tiny step, no matter how little it is, even if it doesn't work out and you fail, the fact that you took that action will help you to take the next action. And it really seriously builds one tiny brick on another until you realize that it's not as hard to get up and take action as you once thought. It's one of those things that you can just practice. I know it's easy to look around and think to yourself, well, some people are action takers and some people aren't. But to be honest, we are all action takers. Some of us are just holding back. Now, with regard to taking that action, the tiniest step sometimes is even hard to figure out. So there are lots of different clues that you can find in books and in videos and audios, and by talking to those around you who are friends and family about what you can do to take that action. But one of the easiest ways is simply by taking a piece of paper and writing down a few ideas. Brainstorming is really amazing. I've used brainstorming a lot lately to help determine what I'm going to write about, what I'm going to blog about, what I'm going to include in my videos, and what I'm going to include in my daily challenges. For those of you that aren't aware, I am doing a daily challenge program. I actually create them on TikTok, but I share them to my other platforms as well, with Instagram and with Facebook. And so The reason that I did that was specifically because I want to encourage people to take action. I mentioned a couple of videos back that I'm working on a book, and I've struggled a lot with this book. It's not that I don't know what to write. I've written out the whole book in note form. I actually even made a video series a few years back that is all about taking action and that I'm going to incorporate into this book. So I know what the book needs to be about. It's just there's a fear, I guess, of not being able to actually accomplish my dream. And so it's been holding me back. And I find all kinds of excuses not to write. I'll have my notebook and my pen and a cup of herb tea all ready to go. And then I'll decide, well, I kind of need to do laundry. Or I should run to the grocery store. I can find all kinds of excuses not to start. And I was thinking about this last night at 3 o'clock in the morning because, well, as an insomniac, that's kind of the time I think sometimes. So I was laying there quietly in my hotel room in Butte, Montana at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was thinking about this dilemma that I've been struggling with writing this book. And I've challenged myself to do chapter 1 and the introduction this month. And this month is rapidly getting over. So I'm getting close to being under the gun here. And so I decided that as I was laying there at 3 o'clock in the morning, I would just come up with one line. And that line is a super important line because I wanted to come up with the first line of the introduction. And so I lay there thinking about what I wanted to say and what images I wanted to create and what message I wanted to convey in this simple little introduction. And I came up with that one line. And at some point, I might change that, but just having it down, and I got my phone out and I got this little note program that I have, and I actually typed it in to my note program, this first line of the introduction. And I think once I did that and I read it a couple of times, all sorts of things started running through my head that I could follow up with that simple little line. And so I made a commitment this week to get that introduction done, and then next week, before the end of the month, finish chapter 1. So now that I have a jumping off point, I feel pretty confident that I can get it done. And it was the simplest, tiniest little action. It was one line, and that's it. And now I feel like a lot of my fears with regard to that introduction are not a problem anymore. Because now that I have that one line, I have a place to start. And a lot of our fears with regard to taking action can be that way. So, action requires action, okay? So I have this thing, and I learned it from a friend of mine. His name is Gary Vaynerchuk, and he's amazing. And he had this piece of paper, and it said this, and it made a lot of sense to me. And so I'm going to share it with you. I recreated it. I'm not standing with a huge piece of cardboard on a street in New York City. I'm sitting on the floor in my living room. But I'm going to show you this piece of paper, and I'm going to tell you what it means. And maybe you'll think that it was inspiring as I did. So here is the piece of paper. It looks like this. And the message is, doing is greater than talking. And that's all it is. Very simple. So, but with that, when Gary did this thing, he was just standing there on the sidewalk. He didn't say anything. He just held up the sign. It was just a photograph, actually. And I started thinking about that, and it's so true, because for so many years, I've spent time just talking about what I wanted to do and learning about it and reading about it and thinking about it and planning, and it's all talk and no action. And you know, that's the saying that goes along with it. Y'all talk and no action. Well, action is amazing, and it's empowering, and it's liberating, and doing really is greater than talking. There are a lot of old adages about taking action and about doing, and one of them is about actions speak louder than words. And it's so true. It's so easy to say, I want to do this, or I wish I could do that. But when you actually take action on it, it means that you really do wish that, and you really do want it in your life. And translating those wishes into actions is empowering. And if you keep doing it long enough, you might actually get that wish, or you might actually accomplish that goal. And so action is incredibly important with regard to our goals, with regard to attaining our dreams. Now, here's the deal. Back to fear. A lot of people are afraid that if they take action, that they'll fail or that it won't be the right action. Well, there's been a lot of research done with regard to taking action. And it turns out that any action at all is better than no action at all. And you don't have to succeed in order to learn something. One of my favorite stories with regard to that is about Thomas Edison and creating the light bulb. And he tried to create the light bulb over 1,000 times. And when he was interviewed by a writer, a local newspaper journalist, and the journalist said to him, "How did you keep going when you had failed so many times?" Edison was stunned. He looked at the man and said, "I didn't fail over 1,000 times. I successfully figured out what didn't work." And so it's all about perception and being perceptive about what you're doing. Now, I have friends in my life who are currently struggling with what they want to do as far as work. And that's a big deal, what you want to do. But here's the reality of the situation. If you go out and get a job tomorrow, you do not, under any circumstances, have to be committed to it for the rest of your life. In fact, go out and get a job you don't want just for the heck of it, to learn something new, and commit to doing it for 90 days. At the end of 90 days, throw a big party and give your 2-week notice. Because you've learned something, and that is that you can step out of your comfort zone, you can be the new kid, and you can successfully complete something for 90 days. That's pretty amazing. Now, do it 2 or 3 times. You may find out what kind of job you actually do want. There's so many people out there that are like confused about the fact that there are so many options in the world and they just cannot figure out how to narrow it down. Well, get out there and experience some things. I was talking to an absolutely fabulous friend of mine tonight. Her name is Tina, and she's one of the most pragmatic people I know. So down to earth. She's a school bus driver. Amazing. The woman's a saint. I could not do that job. But she said that one day she walked into an office building to drop something off for a friend, and she looked around at all of those women either sitting on the computer or looking at magazines in that huge room full of cubicles with no windows, and she thought to herself, "You'd kill me if you made me stay in here." Now, Tina didn't have to do the job for 90 days. She didn't even have to apply. All she had to do is walk into the atmosphere and look around and imagine herself in that place to realize that is not what she wanted to do with her life. And in addition to that, she was in a place in her life where she wasn't all that happy with what she was doing. And after walking in there to drop off that gift for her friend, she came out realizing her job wasn't half so bad, because she got to be outside in the sunshine, she got to work with the kids, she got some autonomy, she got to enjoy what she did in the atmosphere that she worked in, and she wasn't quite as unhappy with her job after that day. And to this day, when I was talking to her this afternoon, when she was giving me a ride out to pick up my car, she was still pretty happy with her job, even though she's been driving that school bus for over 20 years. So, hey, sometimes all it takes is stepping into somebody else's shoes for just a few minutes to figure out maybe what you don't want to do. Amazingly, it is a lot easier to figure out what you don't want to do than it is to figure out what you do want to do. And one of the tactics that you can use when trying to figure out what you do want to do is to make a whole list of the things that you know you don't want to do. And then go back through that list and make out just the opposite. So say one of the things that you don't want to do, like Tina, is work in a big office building. So write down, I don't want to work in a big office building. So what would you do? Maybe you would write down, be your own boss and work from home. That would be the opposite, right? Try that as an exercise and see if maybe you don't come up with a list of some of the things that you do want to do simply by writing down the things that you don't want to do and then coming up with the opposite. So that's one of those little tricks that I've learned along the way. I've been doing a lot of reading in self-help books, and that's what I'm sharing with you, is all the information that I've gleaned from people like Mel Robbins, who wrote the 5-Second Rule, and from Tony Robbins and his TED Talks that I've been listening to, and Oprah Winfrey. She's amazing. I don't care what anybody says. And from others like Gary Vee, one of my favorites, who are all encouraging us to get out there and to follow our dreams. And I'm sharing all of that with you. Now, one of the things that really holds us back from being able to accomplish this and to take these steps is that fear that is put into us by our need to be a part of the community. And Jen Sincero, in her book, You Are a Badass, which I recommend. She's a fabulous writer, super fun to read. But she talks about the little prince, and that's how she kind of sums up that inner voice that develops as we are trained to be a part of society as we grow up as children. And the little prince wants you to stay safe. But the little prince developed all of his ideas about what's safe and what's not safe when you were a child. And as a child, you didn't really understand a lot of what was going on around you. But the little prince is still running things even as you become an adult. And so you think about stepping out and attaining some of these dreams, and the little prince starts screaming and yelling and throwing a fit because he's afraid of you stepping outside of your comfort zone. And your comfort zone is safe and predictable. And even though it's boring and it's not what you want to do with your life, maybe, it might be, but say it's not. Well, he wants to keep you there because that is where you know what's going to happen. And that's where we come back to that fear of the unknown. The fear of the unknown is your little prince trying to keep you safe. Now, in a society where if you don't stay in a group, the lions are going to eat you literally, it's important for the little prince to be there to help you to stay safe. But in today's world, we really do reward on a pretty regular basis those that are willing to step out of their comfort zone and to try new things. The risk takers are those that succeed and those that excel and those that rise to the top. So fighting off the little prince and convincing him that it's okay for you to take a little bit of risk now and then is what we have to do. Unfortunately, that's not all that easy. And there are lots of different books that can help you to determine ways to climb over the little prince, including Jen Sincero's You Are a Badass. But one of the ways that you can do it is one of the ones that I'm working on lately, and that's with Mel Robbins and the 5-Second Rule. Mel Robbins says that if you want to do something, treat it like you're taking off and say to yourself, as though you were doing a countdown for a lunar takeoff, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And when 1 happens, you take action. Now, there's actually neurological research that shows that a countdown will help you to achieve action. Mel's problem was she couldn't get out of bed in the morning because there were so many problems in her life that she was overwhelmed by her reality. And so she would put it off and procrastinate as long as possible by hitting the snooze button. So, snooze button, not a good idea, by the way. Whole nother topic, just take this for granted. Don't do it to yourself. There should be no such thing as snooze in your life. Anyway, so Mel used the 5-Second Rule to help her just to simply get out of bed in the morning. And that was enough to launch her career. And now she's one of the most sought after speakers in the whole United States. Simply because she took a very simple neurological fact of a countdown to action and helped other people to obtain their dreams and goals. And so I'm working with her on the Best Decade Ever program, and that's one that you can look into as well. If you're interested in any of the things that I mentioned during the videos, please make comments. The video will post on my Facebook page after we are done with our live session here, and you can make posts, or you can always private message me, because all of you here on the live videos are my friends on Facebook or my personal friends. Just let me know, and I can give you more information on some of this. Some of the books and some of the talks that I've been listening to that help me come to these conclusions, and they're helping me to motivate me so that I can accomplish the things that I want to accomplish in my life. Now, last week we took a look at my dream board, and so you've got an idea what some of those are. And I would encourage all of you to create a dream board yourself. A vision board helps you to stay focused. It's so easy to get tied up in everyday life and forget your goals and where you really want to be. And so that's why writing them down, journaling, keeping goals like listed on your refrigerator or somewhere you're going to see them every day, and reminding yourself what it is that you want to accomplish here in 2020 is so important. So let's see, I have a couple notes I'm going to check out right now just to make sure that I stay on task. We're about done with this show. I want to thank everyone for joining me. And for those that watch the recording later, thank you as well. And I want to remind you that any movement is better than no movement. It doesn't have to be perfect. As you can tell from watching my videos, I obviously am far from perfect. But every single time I do it, I get a little more confident and I get a little better at what I'm doing. And I hope that some of these videos are able to help those of you that are out there watching my Sunday night live shows to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish with your life as well. So next week is going to be Sunday the 26th. It's actually my birthday. I'm still planning to do my live video because I am dedicated to this. And I'll be here at 8 o'clock Mountain Time again. Also, I'll be talking a little bit more about Embrace, my nonprofit social movement that I'm trying to get together to create more positivity in social media. And I'm going to be talking about perfectionism and how that helps to keep us from being able to retain our goals and to reach our goals. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about how we can translate some of the things that we've talked about this week with regard to overcoming our fears and taking movement into helping build the positivity on the social media aspects and the various platforms that we want to create with regard to Embrace. So I'll tie it all together a little bit and then add a little bit to it and talk a little bit more about perfectionism and how that can keep us from attaining our dreams as well. So I'm going to do that and then tell you some more stories. And I hope that everyone has a great week. I'm looking forward to seeing you all next Sunday, which is kind of silly because I don't actually see you. I stare at my computer and I talk to you. Hopefully, some of you will be there. Anyway, just in case no one else has said it today, and I hope they have, but just in case, I love you, and I thank you so much for being a part of my Sunday Night Live show. Have a great week, and check out my daily challenges if you want a little bit of a kick in the fanny about getting up and doing something different and outside of your comfort zone throughout the week. And I will see you next Sunday. Good night, and cheers.